please subscribe. Yeah, baby.
Laundromats are scattered throughout the United States. According to the Census Bureau, there are an estimated 11,000 laundromats in the country. They generate more than $3.4 billion each year. With a few quarters, you can wash away the week's filth. When you visit a laundromat, what do you feel? Do you sit down comfortably and relax until the timer reaches 0? Do you look over your shoulder just to make sure a stranger isn't approaching? Well, perhaps you should. Countless individuals are assaulted and even murdered in laundromats every year. In fact, some of these crimes remain unsolved. Just imagine for a minute, if you will. The culprit is lurking outside of your laundromat. They watch intently as you tap on your phone. The laundromat is empty. No one is around to hear you scream. They're inside. In the blink of an eye, you're staring at a knife held by a crazed killer. Their intention is very clear. While it seems like something out of a scary movie, laundromat crimes are more common than you might believe. Ahead, you will learn about some of the scariest unsolved laundromat crimes ever. Sometimes, cases never reach a satisfactory resolution. They're open-ended, and that just prolongs the heartache. The case of Rebecca Seaburn fits that criteria. Prosecutors for the state of Ohio attempted to bring a suspect to justice. They succeeded, it fell apart, and they tried again and again. In the end, the suspected killer walked free. That is enough to send chills down your spine. And it is something you should think about as you swipe left and watch the timer on the dryer slow to a crawl. The killer just couldn't take it anymore. The man's lust drove him into a frenzy. On Thanksgiving Day in 1981, the killer would meet 25-year-old Rebecca Seaburn at the Duds and Suds Coin Laundry in Mount Gilead, Ohio. Rebecca needed to clean her uniforms. She worked as an orderly at Merle County Hospital. Her uniforms were covered with the memories of the patients she had served. The killer had bad intentions and a lust he needed to fulfill. Rebecca was supposed to pick up her husband after getting the laundry started. Then they would go to Rebecca's sister's house in Fredericktown, Ohio for dinner. Greg waited 15 or maybe 20 minutes. His wife never arrived. Rebecca was ready to throw her clothes into the washer and be on her way. The killer spotted the attractive nurse. He snuck inside. When Rebecca turned around, she saw the stranger with the knife. He had malicious intent. He grabbed Rebecca and forced her in the bathroom, where he brutally raped her. The knife was plunged into her body 4 times. She was stabbed in the heart. One knife wound pierced her throat so deeply that it cut her spinal cord. Who was the killer? According to the prosecution, it was Gary Chandler. His fingerprints were found in the laundry's bathroom, and he had a history of similar crimes. The defense, well, they had a different opinion. They wanted the jury to believe that Roger Morthland was the killer. Gary Chandler would ultimately be put through 3 trials. First, he'd be found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. That would be overturned. The second trial ended with a hung jury. Finally, Chandler was tried again. The defense and prosecution brought their best. The prosecution figured that they had a killer on their hands and they couldn't let him escape. Sadly, they did not do enough. Gary Chandler was acquitted. Rebecca Seaburn's killer was never brought to justice. They may still be out there today. For many months after Rebecca's murder, women would only visit that laundromat with their husbands. Since this killer and many others are still roaming the streets, this may still be a wise decision today. The 2009 murder of Tamra DuPuy was brutal and frightening. It is another story that will leave you looking over your shoulder as you toss your dirty clothes into the washer. Just think about it. If such a brutal crime can take place in one of Louisiana's safest cities, it can happen anywhere. On a Sunday afternoon, Tamra was doing her laundry at Carter's Washteria on Highway 19 in Zachary, Louisiana. She would be caught off guard by a man with a gun. She'd be handcuffed and shot in the chest. The last person to see Tamra alive was a little girl who had been sent inside by her mother. That little girl would be scarred for life. She would find Tamra handcuffed and bleeding on the dirty laundromat floor. When police got there, DuPuy was already dead. They had one key suspect, Tamra's live-in fiancé, David Brown. The former corrections officer was the perfect suspect. Nevertheless, he would never be arrested for Tamra's murder. In 2010, Brown spoke with WAFB. He denied being involved in Tamra's killing. He also had a message for the killer. "We have an idea who it is, and we're going to go after him, and we're going to get him." Brown went as far as to threaten the killer that if they did not turn themselves in, they'd have a whole bunch of people coming looking for him. Brown would later run for the chief of police for the Zachary Police Department. He would not win that race, and he would not bring DuPuy's killer to justice. That killer is still out there somewhere. Could they be stalking your local laundromat, just waiting to feed their lust for blood one more time? Strangely enough, this case would involve another prison guard. This time, though, the guard would become the victim. 28-year-old Marilyn McCown had a daughter, and she was engaged to Bobby Webster. By all accounts, everything was going her way. On July the 22nd of 2001, she was gearing up for her wedding. It was just 3 weeks away. She had just finished loading her laundry into a machine at a Richmond, Indiana laundromat. When she returned to her mother's house, her mother knew that she was upset. She told her mother about an encounter she had with 2 Hispanic men. They just wouldn't leave her alone. They harassed her to the point where she was left shaken and scared. She told her mother she didn't want to return to the Richmond coin laundry to get her clothing. Nevertheless, she left and went back anyway. She was never seen or heard from again. Surveillance footage showed her putting her clothes into her vehicle and leaving. She didn't seem to be under any stress. She appeared just fine. What happened to Nikki McCown? There were several theories. It was believed that she might have been abducted by the men at the laundromat. Soon, however, the attention would turn to her fiancé, Bobby Webster. He attempted to get McCowan's tuition back from Sinclair Community College. He attempted to return his wedding ring for money, and he canceled the wedding entirely. It's like he knew she was dead, and he was moving on with his life. For Bobby, it all fell through when he took a lie detector test and failed. On November the 9th, though, Marilyn's car was found more than 45 minutes from her Richmond home in Dayton, Ohio. There were signs that the vehicle had probably been stolen. The stereo system was missing. The ignition had been tampered with. Police discovered Marilyn's laundry inside of the vehicle. They thought that McCown maybe traveled to Dayton, and something went terribly wrong there. After all, her ex-boyfriend lived in the apartment complex. From the beginning, it seemed like he would be a good suspect. There was just two problems. He had an alibi, and he passed a polygraph. Police had no choice but to rule him out as a suspect. Another possible killer was former co-worker Tommy Swint. Swint would later be indicted for the murder of Tina Marie Ivory. She was a sex worker from Dayton who was strangled to death in 1991. Police believed he could have been involved in other murders as well. Swint would eventually become a police officer, but he would be fired for failing to tell the department that he had been a suspect in McCown's death. In May of 2008, Swink was linked to Tina's murder through DNA. He was indicted and was found dead by his own hand in February of 2010. Her remains were discovered at one point, and they thought that they might have been McGowan's. However, DNA results were inconclusive. Did something happen at the laundromat that led to Marilyn McCown's murder? Is the killer still out there, or did he take the answers to his grave? He could be out there, and this is something you should consider before going to the laundromat alone. On September the 5th of 1978, Audrey Elaine Reed Ferguson had to complete the chore that so many dread. She packed up her laundry, traveled to the local laundromat in Pritchard, Alabama. The 22-year-old mother's husband became concerned when she did not return. Audrey's car was found still in the parking lot. The door was open, and the clean laundry was found inside. As for Reed Ferguson, it seemed that she had vanished. Her body would later be discovered in an illegal dump site in Pritchard right before Christmas of 1978. In 2007, authorities discovered that information from the case file had gone missing. Former police chief Lawrence Batiste found a piece of paper specifying that an investigation did take place. The file was just nowhere to be found. Did someone want to make sure that the file would never be discovered? Her family would later say that the police work was anything but professional. Audrey's case file wasn't the only one missing. The file for a 2000 murder of a young man had also disappeared. Was it neglect, or did someone have a murder to hide? Either way, the murderer of Audrey Elaine Reed Ferguson was allowed to go free. They may still be out there somewhere. The March 1929 murder of Isidor Fink is a strange mystery. The New Yorker was working at his laundry on March the 9th. Around 10:30 p.m., a neighbor hears sounds of a struggle. That neighbor, Lachlan Smith, rushes to Fink's door. Fink was a fearful man. After all, he was living in one of the worst neighborhoods in New York. He was worried that he'd be robbed one day. He kept his doors and windows locked at all times. As for strangers, they were never allowed to enter his house or business. Police officers were called. The only way inside was for a young boy to climb through the transom and open the door once inside. Once the door was open, police discovered Fink's corpse. He had been shot once in the left hand and twice in the chest. The key to the door was found in the inside lock. Fink had no enemies, and he did not consort with women. This made it difficult for detectives to find a motive. He wasn't robbed. His money was still with him. No murder weapon or spent cartridges were found. The room was undisturbed. Police thought it might have been extortion, but quickly ruled that out. After all, Fink had not been roughed up by gangsters. The murder would later be referred to as the perfect crime. Detectives said that made it difficult to find someone smart enough and capable enough to commit the crime. New York Police Commissioner Edward Mulrooney would classify the crime unsolvable. So far, that rings true. The case is just as baffling today as it was many years ago. Sadly, some people have no choice but to use their local laundromat. Eerily, this may be more dangerous than you would initially suspect. After all, those 5 cases are just a sample of the countless crimes committed at laundromats in the United States and beyond. Next time, you may want to visit with a friend or family member. Even outside locked in your car, you may not be safe. Someone with deadly intentions may be peering in your direction, and they're going to do anything they can to get their hands on you and feed their lust for murder once more.